When I see high-level performance, I see leaders living their best life, being a great soul, making a big difference, and learning to receive. I'm JD, the VIP Coach, and you're listening to the VIP Coach Podcast, liberating leaders, saving geniuses, and growing companies. Bringing leaders to these aspects is what I do, because they need creative freedom to make a big jump in their career. They need to help the world see the opportunity of them, and they rely on their most important gifts and talents to leverage their effectiveness. This is the pathway to high-level performance, and it's about lifestyle, freedom, and growth. Welcome. I'd like to welcome our guests. This is JD, the VIP Coach, where you're listening to the HLP Podcast. We're here to grow leaders and grow companies. It's about freedom, lifestyle, and growth. And today I've invited a legacy coach client, Emmanuel Rose, on the show because we have been sniffing around a conversation that is just essential to talk about. And so Emmanuel has a background in his expertise with the brewing and developing, ripening AI movement that is fast approaching and on the way in and moving at the speed of change that we're trying to keep up with. And so I have asked him to appear here because I'm very curious, and he has a lot to say about this. He's recently written a book about this Agentic Shift or Agentic Pivot, which I'm going to ask him to touch on, and that'll be source material for the session. So Emmanuel, welcome.
Thank you so much, JD. I love every one of our conversations.
Excellent. Let me just start with, give us a taste or a flavor of what the Agentic Pivot or the Agentic Shift is about, and why do we need to be thinking about this?
Well, it works on the premise that we've been in a period of experimentation as a business unit in the United States, at the very least, and that is testing AI and seeing where we can get value from it, where we're not getting value from it, or maybe we're just FOMOing or we have fear about missing out. But that period is coming to a close for a lot of business, and it is moving to AI as infrastructure. And I'll use an example of a new client I have who is saying they're an event planner. They're doing winery, distillery, brewery dinners with events, these wine dinners. And I sat down and said, we want to build this tool that's AI based that matches the distilleries with the event venues and pairs the food and drink based on the offer from the distillery or the winery, and then we want to do the marketing to fill those venues. And it's starting from AI. So that means every event planner that's got Excel spreadsheets and email lists is immediately behind, because the AI will provide a 5 to 10x lever in terms of efficiency and ability to free up time for that company to do other things. So that's the pivot.
So the what I'm getting on that, Emmanuel, is that the typical business processes, the workflows, are becoming more capably handled by an AI resource, which is interesting because I think the tricky word is the LLM. Isn't it the learning language model, or I don't have all the nomenclature.
Yeah.
Large language models. Okay, yes. Forgive my humanness. This is not my area. But apparently that suggests that AI has sort of a brain, and that there's a brain to be thinking and acting, evaluating, judging, and then applying a process. What seems to be clear on this story is that AI is not a passive resource where I look things up on ChatGPT and I ask it questions about how to go about stuff, and then it provides, applied statistics of all the library of knowledge it has, and it's got this great suggestion on how to go about it, and I can, make it bigger, better, faster, stronger. This is really about, augmenting the current work that needs to be done and maybe replacing some of the current work that needs to be done with what I would call a hands-on resource, right? Which is I'm relying on a bot, relying on something that will carry out the actual work, a complex workflow that needs to be done. Am I onto that? Is that correct?
Yeah, I like to use the word augment because that is I say innovate, automate, and augment. And that's what we're doing with all these processes and augmenting with AI. And so like when I'm writing pieces of software, every action is augmented by AI so that I'm either getting the ability to update copywriting or that it generates a list of ideas for me. So it's every step is augmented, and so legacy businesses have got standard operating procedures, right? They've got ways that things get done. We have to look at those SOPs, those standard operating procedures, and say where can it be innovated, where can it be automated, and where can it be augmented with AI, and that will keep a business on pace to not be leapfrogged by a startup, by a Gen Z kid who on their own with Claude Code to go in and take over market share. So it's about remaining competitive and not getting leapfrogged. So that's how I think about it.
It's interesting. I mean, that is it's an interesting frame, right? Is how to be competitive and make sure that the guy in his bedroom doesn't do donuts around you and do it quickly. But I also got to bring up leverage. That to me is the structure piece. Leverage is here we are in this age of, I don't know, I guess we'd call it the age of superior information, I guess the age of advanced automation. I mean, it seems that in what you just described, how that affects the performance of the business owner seems to be very significant. And again, in the coaching, what we try to do is focus strengths, minimize weaknesses, reposition the business so we have a better lifestyle opportunity. More enjoyment of life means more health. More health means more longevity. So we have a more creative and useful business owner that can leverage their time and resources and leverage their team's times and resources. So I just keep thinking about that, Emmanuel, of how this ties into energy management. And albeit I'm coaching performers, human performers that are performing in a business domain, the leverage point of this. So I begin to think about if all my A's are things I love to do, B's are things that I'm okay at, and C's are things that I dread doing, how does this start to sort of support the addition by subtraction piece where I can
I
take
love it.
stuff off the runway, get ready for more scale?
Yeah,
How do we look at that?
all the C's can be programmed now into an AI agent or into a piece of custom software. That's the beauty of this. And I'll give you an example
Wow,
from the
please.
work that I do. Is I do not like cold outreach, and I don't like uh, asking people for appointments, and the time consuming part of the very top of the funnel with cold prospects. And so I built an AI agent that goes out and based on 10 foundational documents, which is the governance of the AI agent. And we have to be clear about this, JD, that that there is work that has to happen in advance to plan how the agents do work on your behalf, and then you have to be human in the loop to monitor and manage. So I don't want to just brush over this like it's like a 10-minute project, but there is an investment of time and thought that happens in order to get good outputs. The AI agent for me goes out, finds people who match my ideal client profile, starts a conversation based on what's readily available on the internet from LinkedIn and social, and then closes that person to an appointment for a meet and greet. And so I have appointments now rather than prospecting as an activity. And so that's a small example of how you can take a C, something you don't like to do, you're not good at, and build software or build an AI agent to then fill in that gap.
It's interesting. So it's got the full set of steps right there in outreach, which is really the front end of a direct sales call. And of course, there are those out there. I mean, God love them. They love prospecting, right? They have the bug.
Sure.
But I'd say most of the entrepreneurs I meet, they would rather delegate all that and do what I call the Frank Sinatra effect. Just walk out and sing and love every part of that. But,
Yeah.
they said Frank Sinatra doesn't move pianos. And so, he's
Right.
got it all set up. And, Frank had a thing where he told his backstage staff that they all made an alarm sound every time Frank would bounce out of his special talent, boop, 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 boop.
Oh.
Frank, get out of the sound booth. you know, Frank, you know,
I
Frank, get
love
out of
it.
the backstage. What are you doing back here? They'd all have this bouncer kind of quality, and he would just let him do it, and say, "No problem, guys. You guys are like moving equipment that sounds, boop, 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 boop," to keep him in check, make sure that he stayed in his zone of self-efficacy, so to speak. But I
Love
hear
it.
I hear you, and that's a great example. And I picked up on several steps there of one, there has to be a setup process, of course, build the workflow, make sure the AI is equipped, which we can get into. That's probably a bit more granular in how that would go. Then there's the deployment to go and gather, kind of target the data. And then there's the contact point where they have this sort of contact. And then the contact is then drumming up an appointment, which really is the ideal bird dogger role, right? Is to go
Yeah.
sniff and then get the scratch, create the itch. And then what you have is a Frank Sinatra moment. Frank, take the mic, sing New York, New York, knock 'em dead, man. And that's a really great point. One of the things that I want you to hit on here, Emmanuel, that we've talked about in our coach sessions is um, how the AI overall, in this sense, then offers the human being, the leader, a much more creative access point. That the leader now has the real dream in this moment, in this modern moment, to access these creative zones and these work products, activities that he or she has never had before. And so for coaches like me, I mean, that's a dream to have them spend 70% of their time on their areas of genius and delegate the rest of the areas, which just dramatically increases their enjoyment of life. And frankly, creates a big I love you from their children to say, thank you for my dad back. So touch on that a little bit on the leverage point of what overall is happening and how we become the possible human through the AI presence. I love your philosophy on this.
Yeah, well, the leverage is dramatic and sometimes fantastical to the point of not really being believable, right?
Hmm.
Where you take
Okay.
so, for instance, each podcast episode that I would run probably would take about 20 hours of human work, and so that was costing me between $500 and $600 per episode. We have automated this down now. With a variety of tools and processes, and it's down to 3 hours of human work per episode now. And so it literally cost me about $100 per episode. So that's a 6x savings. When
Yeah.
we see things like a voice caller AI to confirm appointments for a health and fitness business. They were saving 20 hours a week by having the AI caller do it, and without any kind of negative feedback from their clients. So average wage $20, $400 a week, $1,600, 20 grand a year, and the voice caller is going to cost 2,400. So there is a 10x savings in terms of real cash and time to reallocate the humans into what the humans are best at, which is prospecting, managing current members, and learning about the clients, building better relationships, and then also managing direct reports and spending time where only the humans can do the change management part of the business. So it really there's leverage financially, there's leverage in human capital, and then there's leverage in uh, being able to go and take other opportunities. And it could be prospecting, or it could be spending time with your friends and family, or it could be spending time in nature away from the screens.
This is great. This is great, and it's a really powerful vision, right, of our overall social opportunity as a civilization, really, to be able to get what I call the big C creativity and take maybe the little c creativity stuff, and that goes to the things that, maybe they aren't the most passionate for me, my most skillful, and they're not the most useful, but they're things that are definitely necessary. So you bring up a good point. I'd like to ask you, I'm going to go more a little bit on the skeptical side now. And I want to ask you a few questions and kind of go to the what I call the dark side of AI or the shadow side of
Sure.
AI.
Yeah,
Can we go there?
absolutely.
I think what I keep asking myself is, you know, I hear now that AI is a thinking tool. And so I included, I get on Claude or I get on Gemini, and we're sort of thinking buddies. I'm revealing a question or a thought of how does this work, or how would I say to someone something very difficult to say in an email. So it writes me a sort of email and gives me the calculator moment in the math class. Oh, this is a cinch. Hey, try this out. And it's so chemically stress reducing sometimes to not have to do all the mental work and to get the cheat code in a sense. And so, I think that's a really powerful thing. And I'm just speaking about the thinking thing. I know we're talking about augment and replace and do workflow, but I just want to get back to one of the fundamental uses of AI, which is this um, digital running buddy or bot that's sort of a guest that's become a observer in our life, a probe and a fly on the wall that seems to be getting to know us and seems to have history on us. Um, I hit a wall with actual discretion. It's incredibly fast to implement, but it can't tell me why a specific strategy is a bad idea. It just kind of executes on the syntax of my command. And it's very powerful to have that kind of ability in my own hands to really know anything. My son said to me the other day, "Dad, does anybody really need to know anything anymore? And does anybody really need to go to formal school to figure things out when we have so many ready resources with this?
Yeah.
Literally anything I want to do, I can get what needs to be done." Can we speak to that a little bit? I'd like to get your thought on that. Where does that go?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great question, and that's a brilliantly insightful question. And I think it goes right to why are we incarnated? Uh, and and so we all are going to have to make this decision about uh, what I do use these tools for, what I don't use these tools for, and um,
Interesting.
and
Okay.
so that's the short answer. And there's places in the business where I say, like my LinkedIn outreach, I do not use an AI tool for that. I do that by hand because there's something invigorating about that for me to get the dopamine hit of figuring it out, finding connections, crafting the little DM to connect, and then start a relationship with a human being, right? So that's one phase of it, and one decision that I've met and made, and there's other places. The reality is that we have to understand the fundamental underpinnings of what we're doing. So in my pod, which is a marketing podcast, I break it down to fundamentals constantly because I think that's what the people your son's age are missing out on. They have a lot of shiny tools and ways to do things quickly that we never had and never been available before. But if you don't understand the fundamental underpinnings of human psychology and the cause and effect of how to build wealth and maintain wealth, how to manage your time, how to manage people through change. If you don't understand those things, then you're going to, and you know this as well as anybody, JD, you're going to get to these spots that will be crisis points that were avoidable crisis points by understanding the fundamentals going into it. So uh, we know that every situation's got threats, opportunities, and obligations. And the younger brains, the more immature brains are going to just see opportunities and not think through the situation. And that's no different than it's ever been in my interpretation.
That's a really neat way to put it. So what you're saying is, let's be consciously selective about the application, Emmanuel, that this isn't an all or nothing, that there are selectivity, there's selections that we make in what would best serve whatever outcome we're trying to do, which brings me to say, let's be clear, AI is a tool, not an outcome. What I
Right.
like to think of is, if I know, yeah, if I know the AI is a tool, then I know that the outcome is something I'm going to propose or I'm going to aspire to create. And then the AI becomes a useful place to take in all of that, where I can apply it in places where it certainly is needed. But there may be other things in my own human creativity process that I'm going to do. So it sounds almost like co-creative, it's shared, but I get to be the commander rather than the yielder. And I'm going to take command, and then it'll yield to me in a sense, similar to a dog owner. I give it good instructions. I build it, I tell it where to be. Don't poop over there. Don't poop over here. I'm definitely nourished and changed, but I'm learning how to be the dog owner as the owner of the dog is applying what I give it. And so there's this really interesting interplay. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I love that. It's a great analogy, and it is a tool, and it's a very dynamic and powerful tool. And we have to, in business parlance, we have to look and build governance policies and procedures in order to keep it focused on what we need to do. And I love your idea, and it sounds like you were working with Gemini when you said you couldn't get any kind of hard feedback or directionality from your
Yes.
ideas, because that is one of the gaps in Gemini. That it's personality. If you can give me that little space to call it personality, is that it is not malleable, and so inside of chat, I can help you build a custom GPT that would be the contrarian view, and you would be able to interact with it as a contrarian to whatever you're proposing, and get the kind of harder feedback that you're looking for. And that's part of the executive governance that we have to understand, is that we need to build custom GPTs. We never have a naked conversation with chat if we can avoid it. And so there's a series of documents. I have about 25 docs that I build into each of the custom GPTs to make sure that I'm getting 85, 90% clean work out of it, and only have to do about 10% of massage.
Interesting. So there is you have to provision it. You have to cultivate that, like a farmer would cultivate a certain social soil. You have to cultivate the soil for it to grow good thoughts, for it to grow, communicate from that source. You have to apply the light bulb there, make sure the bulb is shiny and clean and so forth. It shines clean light, clean energy. Is that a metaphor?
Yeah, I like that. And that there's if you just take any one of these steps, they're kind of there can be somewhat challenging to think about and seem complicated. But when we take them in a sequential series over the course of 12 to 18 months, then it really is. It becomes an additive process, and it builds. Each step builds on the last step, so that it's like going to the gym when you're getting stronger in the way that you're managing the tool and the outcomes that you're getting from the tools that you're managing.
Okay. One thing I want to hit on here also, just staying on the side of the how does this work, or staying on the side of the skeptic,
Yeah.
is we've talked about how you build an agentic team, that there are teams of agents that can be built, which would suggest an org chart where we have a superior bot that's overseeing an inferior bot. We have a boss, we have a managing bot, and then we have a technician bot, similar to an org chart in an organization. And as I thought about that, I got stuck on if the lead. So let's go back to your lead gen model. So if I have an agent talking to an agent, let's say, and the sales manager bot is trying to get the bird dogger to go do the activity, we've created an infinite feedback loop of probability there. If the lead gen agent makes a small error in judgment, okay, doesn't say the right thing to the person, ticks off the prospect, has a real cold response, misses a particular talk track, doesn't do the follow up, the agent, how does that error get scaled? In an organization, mistakes, according to Deming, are the most necessary risks to take. And those mistakes, as Bob Ross would say, are the most successful things that we can do. Creating involves trial and error. And so the agent, I guess, polishes it into a professional looking lie. I mean, it's right. I mean, it's highly efficient at creating activity, but does it really have the outcome integrity? And I wonder that of if a managing bot and a technician bot are working together, the managing coach is saying, are you doing the performance? And what are you doing? Is there actual interplay between these two bots where they are learning together and that the active bot that's doing the work, much like an athlete or a performer, is learning how to become more capable of the outcome? I can't see that. I'm struggling with that because the agent doesn't care about the outcome. Right. What am I missing here? Am I sounding crazy?
No, I understand. There's a couple of key points here. One is that the AI agent, only cares about the outcome that you assign it to care about. So number one, and then that there's a process to. One of the philosophies is to create sub agents for each specific small task. So let's say in this lead gen idea, we would have number one, the agent that goes and finds the ideal client profile matches. And then that agent would then bring it back to a CSV and fill out the CSV. So that's a very clear, identifiable process that can be managed. The next agent will then take that and connect it to full enrich and enrich that file with all the information we can get about that human. That would be their job, is to manage that next second step. The third agent would be in charge of outreach and sending initial emails or making phone calls. And then there would be feedback from the marketplace from that agent. Then you would have a fourth agent that would review the transcripts from all that activity and then train the outreach agent based on feedback. So you start to build these into subtasks, and then you, as the human in the loop, would see the success, and then also get the transcripts to see where the breakdowns are, and then you would update the constitution of the outreach agent based on the outcomes that it's producing. So again, I want to be clear is that this is not a magic one and done. Just set them up and turn them loose, and they're all going to figure it out. We are in the loop, making sure that they're getting the things done that we're asking them to do in their constitution, and that they're not getting scope creep, which humans get scope creep. So we can accept that as also part of the challenge. There's the water cooler talk for 45 minutes. That's scope creep. The agent doesn't get that, but they might start adding in activities that you don't want them to do. So I build a big Poppy agent, which is the master of all the agents, and ensure that my sub agents do not get scope creep. That's his only job, no scope creep.
Well, it is, and it's a great thought. It caused me to think about a recent, we'll call it the co-pilot meltdown that I had. I was asking, now this is between me and the co-pilot agent, or the co-pilot. I'm in a chat with it. I'm asking it to render a image for a blog that I'm creating. I wanted it to make a header, and I had this text that went in there. And I gave it the text. I thought I gave it a good prompt. Maybe this is user error on my part, so it creates it. The reality of it is it looks like crap. And I say to it, that's not what I'm looking for. And it goes into this rant, which is just something I would hear on an airplane. Mr. Davidson, I'm sorry we didn't give you the right pillow. We'll get it better now. It went through the wrap.
Yeah.
I mean, right out of the textbook of customer service 101. You're right. Admitting the customers. I mean, just right off the page, man. I could have taught it at Disneyland. I mean, yes. And I'm like, okay, right. But I know there's no sincerity in the apology. So I said, well, great. Why don't we have a go at it again? Let me give you a little bit more clarity. And it said, well, how about this, this, and this? And I said, well, that sounds about right. Why don't you go ahead? Second time around. It renders it, but it still gets all the spelling wrong.
Right.
So I said, okay, great. It must be on me. Proofread it twice. Go back through it. Do not send it to me unless it's picture perfect. This will be the final. Okay, John, I realize you're frustrated. I'll get it right this time. Don't worry. I'm your man. This will be the last one. For sure, 4th generation looks like crap. Still spelling errors. So I asked it, I said, what am I doing wrong? Is there anything I can do to pitch you differently that would help me get you to be effective? It gave me input. I applied the input. Is it just Copilot? I mean, is it just that has the flaw built into it? After about the 8th time in the cycle, I told it was fired. I said, you're fired. I said, you're driving me crazy. I said, I can't understand why you can't get this. This is very simple. It turned me into an axe murdering person. And I just blew up, and I just said, I just can't do this anymore. And it sends me this little message, says, okay, give me one more chance. It gives me the Eeyore that walks up. Give me please, just pleading, one more chance, one more. And I said, fine, one more, we'll try it. Nothing. And I can't seem to find my way out of that scenario. And that's happened again. Maybe I just need to switch the AI that I'm using, but I could have asked a human being to render that for me in a much faster period of time. Sure, it may have cost me a little more, but the frustration that I was having, I mean, it just isn't worth all the mental anguish and stuff. How should I look at that? And give me some direct input on how someone would navigate that, albeit I'm having an agent do what I think I should have it do. I'm in the loop. The agent isn't getting it right. We're consistently getting it wrong. How do I process intervene? How do I improve the process?
Well, that's a lot of questions in a complicated situation. So you're not the only one who's had that issue. And the solution now is to take that image, the first one, and put it into Canva. And Canva has a slice and dice tool that will allow you to update that image. So that's the solution now, as of 3 days ago. Okay.
So change up the source.
Yeah, and then if you're gonna go images, then and this is ubiquitous for all of these activities that we're trying to do, is don't just ever try one. Like if I'm going to do images, I'm going to do Nano Banana or Grok, because those are the two that are most responsive today. But in 2 weeks, it will be different. So Mid Journey is another one that's a good one. But those are the two I've had the best success with, Grok and Nano. And now that we have editing ability with Canva, then it's just a workflow issue, right? If you're not getting what you want the second time, then you push it to Canva and you can go dig through the layers. But this is where we're at in the curve, JD. We are training these things. And so we're still in this early adopter phase. And for me, I hate doing images exactly for the reasons you just described. Like I don't want to spend 45 minutes to get an image. I'll go to Dreamtime and buy one if I need it.
Right. I mean, yeah. Right? That's
But
great.
I will spend 3 days without sleep on Replit or Base 44 or Lovable, building a piece of software to replace something that I'm doing that I don't like. So that I will spend time with, images I will not. That's just how I am. So that's what we have to decide right now in this time. In 2 years, all these things are going to work perfectly.
So it's an evolution.
Yeah.
Emmanuel, the piece that you brought up about commanding an agent, um, depending on the agent's judgment, putting my trust in, let's say, a Zapier agent or an open claw. I create one
Yeah.
in there. His name, I create an agent in there named Mark, and Mark all of a sudden is going to become a brain. I'm Geppetto. It's Pinocchio, and I've made this little digital being called Mark.
Right.
And how there's a command and there's a yield to the world of Mark. I'm going to command Mark to give me outcomes I want, but I'm going to yield to the reality of his cognitive filters. And I'm going to augment my own cognition with his cognition. Um, Noise and signal. Where do I draw the line? Um, I'm going to focus my human intent with the help of that agent. I
Yeah.
may build out a marketing plan in my online newsletter. I may build a social media campaign with him and program him with those specific things. Right now, Meta has come out with Manus. Manus is this, like you said, multi sub agent setup where multiple skill sets are done in different buckets, like dressers and drawers. I'm trying to figure out how that can be. Let me just hit it right on the nose. I'm struggling with the word agents because to me, an agent is, let me reference it to myself. If I'm listening to you and I'm coaching you and I'm hearing you in your reality and I bend the beam back to me and I know I can do something in service to you, that my seeing and sensing into your situation is activating agency in the sense that I want to help you. And that my resourcefulness and my gifts or whatever it is inside me that needs to come to your aid, I choose to export that, and agency is something I choose to serve with. I struggle calling AIs agents. I think they are complex automated workflows at best, but I struggle a little bit with the name, and maybe that's just me, but throwing around the word agent is a little confusing to me because of how I reference my own work. I'm trying to work through that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's another dimension that if you add, well, let's just talk about how I program the agents first. And there's always a soul document, there's a constitution, there are exclusion words, there are neuromarketing triggers, there is an FAQ. There's the hero's journey. Like I'm programming this thing to think philosophically as close to what is important to me as possible, and then to make the decisions based on its soul and its constitution, which are documents that I have poured hours into in order to shape the interaction style. So that is what differentiates it from a Zapier automation, is that it has these guardrails for developing content and interacting with the rest of the world based on these philosophical touchstones.
Okay, so let me just back to let me just make sure I'm tracking with you. So this is like as they call it in psychology, a schema. So
Mhm.
or we might say an epitaph or a tabloid, a base from which a fundamental I guess I could call it a moral base, or I guess I could call it a base, a source from which my sense making happens. Um, what we're discussing right now is a pseudo way of being or a
Mhm.
ground of being that is a digital being. I hear in this reproduction, in that there is parenting going on with the creation of a brainchild,
Yeah.
and that this brainchild is instilled with a sort of chromosomal infrastructure that has a biome. And in that sense, the biome is in some sense giving it its way of making decisions.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead. Go.
So I'm just saying I would not interact with any agent platform that doesn't have the free fill of as many documents for directionality as you can generate and upload to it. So
Which are
that's
which are
my
so there's
line.
a reference architecture there. Fair?
Yes, yes. I don't want something on my brand that's not acting within my brand.
Okay. So there's an ethos there that is uh, yeah. Yeah, I think of it like a farmer, right? I mean, you're talking about planting the soil, and then what comes out of the surface is the quality of the soil underneath. Regenerative farming, and that you're cultivating that quality of the soil that comes into the quality of the decisions, the quality of the action, the quality of the intent. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then that there is a feedback loop that is created in order to find and redirect it when it is not on track.
You're saying
And that's
there's
my
you're
job.
saying
I have to manage it just like an employee.
right, but you're what you're talking about are somewhat of the conditions for learning. I mean,
Yeah.
in learning in the sense that it is doing things either towards something or not towards something, the something being the outcome. But when it's not moving something towards something, we're saying that there's an adaptation there, and that adaptation is bearing not just your witnessing, but it's bearing its own witnessing. Which brings me to ask, is it conscious? Um, that's a very, very deep question. I'm sure that a lot of the great minds are wrestling with is, does this become conscious? Maybe my thought is, as you said this, is it becomes aware enough to know whether it's closer to what you want or not. And being that that may be enough, we don't have to define it as, as like saying, does God exist or not, which is a great question to wrestle with. But does it need to be relevant here to get to the place we want to get to? I mean, we're trying to find ways to increase our efficiency and our effectiveness and maybe our enjoyment of getting work done. And maybe it just serves that purpose, and that's the depth that it needs to be, is it's conscious enough to help us in a co-creative state learn with us as a learning ally how it can better get the capabilities that it needs to be getting. Is that making sense?
Yeah, and I mean it is, and this is. I'd love to sit on a beach in Mexico with you and smoke a Cuban cigar and have a glass of rum and have this conversation, because it's a 5 hour talk. We know that well, what is consciousness, right? It's being aware of itself, right? Being aware of itself. So in that respect, I think it is consciousness. It's we've generated this second being, these other beings. They have enough agency that they create their own social networks, even create their own language. So,
We're
so
talking well, is this Skynet? I mean, I'm going back to the Terminator. I mean, I can't help but go there
yeah,
and say, does this grow like vines in a garden? Does this continue to grow its own? Is this the master cylinder in Tron that starts to suck up all the programs and become, an all powerful Oz? I mean, where does that go? I mean, we have to bring that in the room. If it's starting to acquire mass, if it's starting to acquire a knowledge base, a library of technique, is it infinite? I mean, it goes beyond our life, right? It has a this is the great collector of all the great suppository of all the great things from which it will remember more than we ever will. It seems too good to be true. I mean, at the same time, it seems to be honestly a little overwhelming to think about.
yeah, it is. And I'll just say I partition these parts of the conversation for other parts of my life around campfires and
Sure, that's fine.
philosophical thinking, right? Yeah.
That's
But yeah,
fine. Let's stay
there.
practical.
But yeah, these are questions we have to ask because we're not naive, and so I do appreciate that.
Well, in that sense, yes. I mean, yeah. So we'll leave that for another talk. But coming back to the practical application of it, um, what I made a distinction of here, Emmanuel, and this was a very key one, is, there are things like OpenClaw and ClaudeBot and Clam and Manus and Zapier Agent, and they go on, and they're becoming more and more prevalent. Lindy, for example. And they're very interesting because they can hands-on take care of things. So it's not just think, augment, but it's also replace.
Yeah.
One thing that I think we could really hit on is defining the agents in the augmentation space, where I'm a CEO, I have 20 managers, and I want to augment them with the best AI tools that I possibly can to support their capabilities. I
Yeah.
love that idea, and how to engage that in, like you said, a more design way, not that they yield to the agent system, but we build an agent process around them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'll say that's step 8 of a 10-step
Okay,
process. So
got
that's
it.
the other thing. Yeah, is that
Okay, so
we
I'm
we
getting
want to
ahead.
draw back to the fundamentals, and there's 3 phases, and there's a couple steps inside of the 3 phases from what
Okay,
I've observed in the deployments I've done with
okay,
clients and from talking to other developers. Number one, the CEO doesn't have to know about Base 44 or Zapier
right,
or any of that, right?
right,
So
all that.
that is nerd talk, and I love talking about it. But for a leader of an organization, not critical any more than it is to know, who their web host is. So,
Very good.
what we want from management is to put together somebody inside the organization who is their chief AI officer as a secondary role, or to hire a new one, or to get a fractional, and then have that chief AI officer work on building governance policies and procedures. Number one, bring the shadow AI up, because we know that people are using AI, but in ways that are not safe, secure, uh, protecting our intellectual property and our personal identifiable information. So we have to have governance policies and procedures, number one, and get everybody on the same page with the IT department so that we're safe and secure. That's the first step.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad that you took us back to originating from the beginning. Like you said, set it up, set the table, and we're talking about integrations, where what is the way to serve this up to management so that they buy in? How do we integrate it? So we're saying we have a person of interest inside, or we have a point leader inside that is the one that's sort of the watchtower ninja of all this. And they are the one, the conductor, that's going to conduct this. And we have to set it into a more fundamental governance where we're safe. There's adherence to safety practices with this. So we're setting up, we're setting the table. Is that correct? Building the foundation.
Yes, exactly. So we have
Okay.
somebody who's in charge of it, then somebody who
Okay.
starts to manage it, and
Okay.
then
Got it.
from there, then we get our strike team, our AI interested, curious, tech forward group of people, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who are going to help to drive the process for the organization,
I see.
and so that those first 2 things set the stage to be able to begin to, as in your analogy of farming, which was, we're going to start to then plow the field and start seeding it, and that's the
Mm,
potential to harvest this ROI
mhm,
and stay relevant over the next 12 to 18 months.
mhm, mhm.
And
That's
so
great.
then that kicks in the Kotler change management concepts, and then we have to do some strategic planning and use case identification, and then start to train the strike team on how to use these tools, yeah, within industry best practices. So that's kind
Got
of
it.
the phase one.
Okay, I'm starting to see this now. I'm beginning to make this clear. All right. What's phase two?
Phase two is when we take the fruit of the strategic planning and start to identify the use cases that we found, and then build up the deployment list. And when I look at deployment lists, I like to find high value, low input, low and fast deployment times, so we get as much action as quickly as possible. with something that's very visible and can prove ROI, like the appointment voice caller, appointment confirmation voice caller. That's a very straightforward activity to put in, and it yields back an ROI instantly. So we start to go through this task visualization, SOP identification, use case identification, and then start to work through that list and get into implementation. And that's really the second phase, is getting a working work process for implementing automation, innovation, and AI augmentation.
Got it. Okay. That's cool. That's cool. All right.
And
Why
then,
couple
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. I was just saying that through that, we've then created data lakes, and we've done all this technical backend stuff in order to get into the third phase, which is the AI agent creation and deployment, and the customized software, and then the dashboarding of all of these activities. So that's the third phase.
Yeah, I'm just taking a note on that. No, that's great. That's great. We're going to start winding down the conversation. A couple questions here that would get us to the wrap up point. Why did you write the book? Why did you write it? Why did you write the Agentic Pivot? What was the point?
The point is giving a roadmap for how to look at the next 2 or 3 years, and put in a position of leadership. This is what I've seen over the last 4 years since I wrote Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, the changes that have happened, and provide a touch point for leadership to say we're either on track and we're doing these things, or we're a little bit behind and we need to catch up. And here's a process by which we can catch up.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so that kind of rounds it all out, doesn't it? It really puts it's a more universal, a more broad brush of the whole thing. And it seems clear to me, Emmanuel, that part of this is leading a person, a non-user, an unfamiliar, across a certain threshold. I mean, what seems clear to me is that the speed of change on the outside has to match the speed of change on the inside. Otherwise, we become irrelevant. And so to
Right.
become relevant, it involves that kind of alignment. And there's certainly a change underway, and we're all facing it. It's just at what level are we ready, willing, and able to integrate that change? And what I thought from your book was really important was helping us take the gulp, helping us sip, and helping us digest how we want to play in that change, and at what level, whether it's thinking, augmenting, replacing, and so forth. What's the command and yield in that? What do I command, and what do I create, and what do I yield to, or else? But it's also the thing I think you just make so clear, which I love, is there's a lot of stories out there and a lot of fear about what AI could do. And what I love about your view, and this is why you're so unique, is that the whole AI is really designed to leverage the possible human. And I know I hit on that earlier, that if we
Yeah.
really want to make a great run to becoming the human being 3.0 that gets access to all these dreams about the kind of work we love to do, the kind of contribution we want to make, the kind of a time we want to spend with our loved ones, the access point with our team, the deeper conversations. I mean, efficiency is sort of a defense against depth, but we're so hungry for it. And we just don't find it enough in our day-to-day moments because things are so busy and we've got so much busy work. Maybe if we could bring the noise down, we could really get the signal and get a little more subpoena from the soul. And I'm wondering if the message is AI is that subpoena.
I think if we can approach it from a point of consciousness where we understand from our values clarification work how much is enough, how much
Yeah.
growth is enough, how much money do I need in order to manage my lifestyle and all the things in my life. And if I had another 5 hours a week freed up, would I learn French? Would I learn to play the guitar, or will I learn how to watercolor paint? Um,
Amen.
To me, that's the opportunity that we have. And my prayer for humanity is that
Wow.
we accept the offer that the technology is bringing us right now to have some time to be more fully human and less of a worker.
Yeah, well, that comes with a lot. That's a great, great invitation, which is softening the edges, opening the mind, and continuing to find our way in giving care and concern to the things that matter in our life and looking at the opportunities to leverage that. And to me, this is a whole conversation about access. Is what can we access? What are we not accessing? What's the clearance now that we have to go into that? I'm so glad that you and I are touching on this. Well, this has been great. And how do people get a hold of you? How do, if they want to come in and say, hey, Emmanuel, let's get an integrative process and let's bring in some strategic AI processes and things. How does that start? What's the beginning of that process?
Yeah, I love to have conversations about it, even if somebody doesn't hire me or my group. EmmanuelRose.com is an easy way in, or on LinkedIn, Emmanuel Rose, B2B lead generation.
That's great. And how do they get your book?
Oh, can go on EmmanuelRose.com or can go to Amazon and find me there.
Okay. Okay, that's excellent. And I encourage the readers to do that. And readers, if you want to, in our coach sessions, if you want to send me an email about just your thoughts and questions about this, I can forward them on to Emmanuel because he is a heck of a resource and a legacy coaching client of HLP. And so I hope that this podcast was helpful and that it gave you at least one or two nuggets or kernels as you listened, because it's all about implementation. All the ideas in the world are just hallucinations until we implement them. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Emmanuel, thank you very much for being here. It was a pleasure. This was a great one. You've been listening to the VIP Coach Podcast, Freedom, Lifestyle, and Growth. Are you ready for high-level performance? Find us online at highlevelperformance.com and get yourself coached, raise your A game, and experience the difference. Pull it all together. Get your team coached to high-level performance and become part of the community today and position your company for greatness. It's about freedom, lifestyle, and growth. The VIP Coach.